Restore Cleveland Hope because Hope is the Underground Railroad code name for Cleveland. Restore Hope because Cleveland does not know, remember, or celebrate its vibrant 1800s history in the way, for example, Oberlin or Ashtabula do. Restore Cleveland Hope worked passionately to save the Cosette Bates House, and on April 6, 2007, University Hospital graciously donated the house. We have begun research, given workshops, held front lawn parties of Freedom Seekers Day Camp, and a church cellar safe house reenactments, and large community programs, and smaller intergenerational educational events. So the journey continues. The spirit of the Underground Railroad is alive and well. Cosette Bates is the last pre-Civil War house still standing. All the rest of the abolitionist homes are long gone, torn down and forgotten. Restore Cleveland Hope will maintain the spirit of those anti-slavery activists whose farms were located on the land that is now where Case Western Reserve University, Severance Hall, the museums, Botanical Gardens, University Hospital, and even up into Little Italy. It makes sense that Cleveland was named Hope and that there was so much activity. The location on the lake, the waterways to follow Canal, River, and Lake Erie with sympathetic ship's captains to carry freedom seekers across to Port Stanley, a town in Canada codenamed God Be Praised. From hope to God Be Praised. The only mark left of all those abolitionists and those Underground Railroad conductors, the only mark left in the area is the Ford family's name on the street named Ford Drive. All the homes are gone except for the Cosette Bates House, built by Andrew Cosette for his son Justice. The families were all deeply involved in the movement. For the Fords and Cosettes and John Bell, sometimes referred to in the records as John Brown, but not the John Brown. This was a black barber whose house was near what is now the Flats. They were all conductors and worked together. Back then, John Melvin, a lecturer activist in Cleveland, unlike many other cities, blacks themselves led the civil rights movement in the 1800s, and John Melvin can be considered the founder. In 1833, Harriet and John were two members of 17 charter members of the First Baptist Church. And after 18 months of controversy, when they built the new church, he secured the adoption of a rule. It had always been up to that point when they were just meeting in homes, just everyone seated wherever they were. When they built the new church, there was some controversy about having blacks sit in a colored section in the balcony. But they fought it, and he secured the adoption of a rule for free seating at a time when practically all white churches had a colored gallery. This epoch-making event set a precedent for desegregated seating in all Cleveland churches at that time, the 1800s. Melvin was the leader. He established schools for blacks. He fought black laws. He established cultural societies, debate clubs, lecture series, and raised a $1,000 bail for black defendants until they had their day in court. And at 65, John Melvin, this was when the Civil War broke out, he organized a Negro military company that could not fight for Ohio because the law specifically designated white men, and the governor rejected the Negroes' enlistment. Melvin established the Young Black Americans, then went to Massachusetts and joined the famous 54th Infantry Regiment. John Melvin spent his lifetime making freedom possible. His influential leadership makes me proud of him and proud of Cleveland. Melvin and his wife, Harriet, were on their way to freedom in Canada, but saw something in this community that made him choose to settle here. What Melvin did during that time of slavery and black codes was as noble and courageous in many ways as what Martin Luther King did in the 1960s. John Melvin reminds me of King in the way he reached out to blacks and whites, recognizing that collaborating in anti-slavery work would free everyone from the bondage of slavery. Cleveland's Underground Railroad code name was Hope. Perhaps what Melvin sensed when he decided to settle here was hope. When the Kozak base house was donated, Restore Cleveland Hope Incorporated persuaded Councilman Kevin Conwell to rename East 115th Street John Melvin Street. Love is a community-creating force. We witnessed the same creativity, courage, and collaboration in the 60s when Black Baptist minister Martin Luther King, pacifist Reverend Glenn Smiley, a white Texas Methodist, and Bayard Rustin, a gay black Quaker, and Rosa Parks, and many others launched a nonviolent revolution, that transformed the United States of America. During the Montgomery bus boycott, black people carpooled or walked miles. People were fired from their jobs. People were beaten. King's house was bombed. It was a dangerous, dreadful time, as was the time of the Underground Railroad. And yet, these people in the 1960s held strong day after day for over a year. The bus boycott centered in the churches succeeded. And finally, the Supreme Court order came down. And the morning that the buses were to be integrated, the Montgomery newspaper headlines blared, "Tomorrow, if Negroes ride the buses integratedly, there will be blood flowing and fighting on every corner." That morning, Martin Luther King held up that paper with that headline at two different mass meetings and said, "If this be true, then let us see to it that every drop of blood is our own, and every act of fighting on the street corners is theirs." And Reverend Glenn Smiley, the white Methodist Texan, was giving the same message to a smaller group of white people trained in nonviolence in Montgomery. Wow. I think about it and wonder, what would I have done? What would you have done? And these, many of them, were children your age and younger. If you look at any of the film from that time, Martin Luther King looks like a baby.